Chapter 7. The Coolest Dinosaur Ever. Well then, today, we shall go hunting. An excellent idea. We've spent so long aiding in the Leviathan's butchering, and I was just thinking it would be nice to get some exercise. I am down for that too. Hunting. Yay. Okay, nope, slow down. What are you even talking about? I asked. We'd just finished breakfast, and I was settling in to enjoy a nice, relaxing moment of peace when my familiars pulled a hunting trip out of thin air and slapped it right onto our itinerary. You realize that they're not finished butchering the Leviathan, right? Fel, Gan, Dora-chan, and Sway all looked completely disinterested in that little detail. Not finished? They might as well be. Indeed. We've obtained the beast's meat, so the important task is over and done with. Right. That's what I was gonna say. The meat was all that really mattered. Meat. Seriously, guys. I groaned. I mean, yes, I'm well aware that the four of you prioritize meat above all else. You're the most dedicated carnivores I've ever met, no question about it, and since they wrapped up the deboning over the last 2 days, we do have all the meat we're gonna get already. My item box is as full of meat as it's ever been, but that doesn't mean the whole thing is over. Okay, listen up. Just because we have the Leviathan's meat doesn't mean we can check out and act like it's all finish. There's still the whole head left to butcher, remember? I said. HMPH. The head is inedible, and as such, is of no consequence to me, Fel said. Gan, Dora-chan, and Sway all chimed in with their agreement. Okay, but the world doesn't revolve around you, and I'm pretty sure the head's actually gonna be the most time-consuming part of the whole monster to process, I replied. What? It will be longer still? Truly. I'd hoped we would be able to return home next week, perhaps. I miss the bath there dearly. I know, right? It's easy enough for Sway and me since we fit in the bath here, but no way could you ever squeeze in, Gun. The bath at home's so much bigger and nicer. Wait, that's why you're excited to go home, Gun? For the bathroom? Sure, I'd had it enlarged specifically so that he and Fel would fit, and it was pretty nice to hear that he appreciated it, but did it really compete with the Leviathan in terms of importance in his mind? That was a bit of mental priority arithmetic that I didn't think I'd ever be able to square. The gluttonous quartet probably, scratch that, definitely thought that now that the meat was in our hands, we could just pack up and leave, and all I could do was roll my eyes at them. Ooh. Why are you guys always like this? I grumbled. Not only are they still working on the butchering process, they haven't even decided what parts of the Leviathan they're going to buy yet. We're gonna be here for a good while longer, I'm betting. They'd made it pretty clear that they wouldn't be buying everything, after all, even with all of the meat taken out of the equation. Their limited budget would have made that practically impossible, from the sound of it. That meant that I had to be available to collect the materials that they decided not to purchase from me, not to mention getting paid for the parts they did want and handling all the other little things I was sure would crop up. It wasn't as easy as waiting for them to finish taking the monster apart and hitting the road immediately afterward. They told us that they'd be working at the guild today for a reason, you know? Let's head over, everyone. The Leviathan's body had been fully processed, and now, it was time to take apart the head. It was still huge, but it was small enough to butcher in the guild's storehouse, which was the preferable option by a tremendous margin, so long as it was an option. Gah. Surely we can leave that task in the guild's hands and go on our way. Fel protested. I'm sure they'll have a lot more butchering and bean counting to do that we won't be able to help with. Yeah, but they can't exactly process the head if they don't have it, can they? I countered. I was currently holding on to the thing in my item box. Come on, get a move on. We arrived at the capital's Adventurers Guild Hall, and were immediately shown to the storehouse. The moment I stepped inside, I found that a certain someone had been lying in wait for us. There you are, Mukouda, and Dora-chan, and Gun as well, Elrond exclaimed as he dashed over to us at the speed of sound. The smile on his face had shot straight past friendly and landed somewhere closer to dangerously unhinged. Yeah, and Fel and Sway too, I noted, doing my best to play it cool and smile back at him. Oh, so they are, Elrond casually replied, brushing them off entirely. You know, Elrond can actually be kinda mean sometimes. I could sort of see how the progression had gone down. He'd always been super into dragons, but ever since he'd managed to see a real one, which is to say, ever since he met me, he'd started straying further and further from conventional social graces. It felt like his filter had been particularly lacking recently, to a dangerous degree. As I reflected on Elrond's devolution, he took the opportunity to validate all of my concerns. Dora-chan. Gan. I missed you both so much, he shouted as he charged toward the dragons. I didn't know what he was thinking, but I knew how he was coming across, like a lunatic degenerate. I frantically jumped in front of him and spread my arms, blocking his path. What are you doing, Mukouda? Why are you getting in my way? Elrond wailed. That should be super obvious. I shouted back. Have you already forgotten what happened back in Carolina? Even if you've forgotten, I remember perfectly well. It's filed in the never forget corner of my long-term memory. Well, that was then, and this is now. Elrond shot back, nonsensically, if you ask me. They've been here in the capital this whole time, but I haven't gotten to see them at all. They kept being occupied by nonsense like guard duty and whatnot, and somehow things lined up so that I never, ever ran into them. Do you realize how torturous it is to be so close to them, yet so far away? Elrond's little speech felt very reminiscent of the sort of thing a card-carrying pervert would say to justify their indiscretions. You could never understand how hard it is to live with these urges. But, it wasn't that the universe was conspiring against him, or anything. The truth was very simple. Dora-chan and Gan had flown away because they didn't want to be around him. They were just avoiding you, that's all. Take the hint already, I muttered under my breath. After how everything had gone down that one time in Carolina, it couldn't have been that hard for him to recognize the reality of the situation, surely? Any reasonable person would have been able to figure it out. But regardless, that wasn't even the biggest issue here. And were you trying to hug them a moment ago? Why? How could that possibly be okay? I knew what I'd seen. There was no other way to interpret the way he spread his arms. He had fully intended to hug the dragons. Why not? Just a little. What's the problem? Elrond countered. Just a little? Seriously? The problem is that they don't want it, obviously, I shouted, spinning around to look at the dragons as I did so. Unsurprisingly, they both looked deeply disgusted and nodded rapidly in agreement. What? No. Elrond wailed. Why, though? How could they not want to be around me when I love them so much? Okay, see, it's exactly stuff like this. That was really creepy, I said. I hadn't meant to be that blunt, but it had sort of slipped out. Creepy? How could you say that, Mukouda? That's so mean. Elrond moaned as he dropped to his hands and knees, crawling along the floor. Now he was acting both creepy and pathetic. I clearly wasn't the only one who thought so either, judging by how put off all the guild employees who happened to be nearby looked. They hurried off to do their work somewhere else, presumably in the hopes of not having to deal with him. My familiars and I were left alone with Elrond, and frankly, I had no clue what to do about him, which made the arrival of a certain someone who immediately kicked him up to his feet all the more welcome. I take my eyes off you for 1 second, and look what happens. Back to work, this instant. What? Hey! Cut it out, Moira. I haven't even gotten to touch Dora-chan and Gen yet. Wait, no, don't take me away from them. Dora-chan. Gun. And just like that, Moira and Elrond were off, the former bodily dragging the latter. I raised a hand in a gesture of quiet thanks to her. Before long, the guild's workers returned to the storehouse. I asked where I should put the Leviathan's head, and brought it out from my item box at the location they showed me. Then, at Dora-chan and Gan's emphatic insistence, we left the guild as quickly as our legs could carry us. Well then, today, we go out on the hunt. Yes, that sounds wonderful. We've little else to do with the day, after all. Sounds good to me. That guy said we didn't have to bother going back to the guild yesterday, after all. Hunting. The day had only just begun, and from the way my familiars were talking, you'd think our plans had been set in stone for ages. This again? I sighed. I mean, sure, we don't have any plans today, but we just went hunting right before the Leviathan project kicked off, right? You took down a bunch of dragon turtles. Weren't those big enough prey for a good long while? I wanna take it easy today. I'd been sitting down and enjoying a nice after-breakfast cup of coffee when they started pestering me to take them out hunting. It really ruined the relaxing atmosphere. Honestly, though, as long as I'm being honest, I guess I have to admit that I had also seen Fell's proposal coming from a mile away. In fact, I'd known it would turn out like this the moment it became clear that our schedule for the day was empty. We'd visited the Adventurers Guild the day before, and frankly, it hadn't gone well. Elrond had gone berserk the moment he'd seen Gan and Dora-chan, trying to hug them and making himself look like a total freak in the process. He'd really flown off the handle lately. Anyway, later that night, Willem, who'd been holed up in the guild for quite some time, finally made an appearance at my rented house again. He'd told me that they had the butchering of the Leviathan's head well under control, and that I wouldn't need to stop by the guild until it was done. Or rather, he'd said that I shouldn't stop by the guild, since if I showed up, it would cause the work to grind to a halt. I'd dropped the head off the day before, so I didn't see any particularly good reason for us to stick around either. That said, I did feel a little irked by the fact that I was being treated like a liability. I was technically the client here, after all. I also had the presence of mind to admit that a certain dragon lover with no sense of restraint was the one who was really at fault, though. So, long story short, we ended up with a block of free time on our hands from now until the head had been fully processed. We didn't have much of anything to do, sure, but I'd been tagging along with my familiar's overactive antics for so long that I had to seize the opportunity to take it easy whenever I had even a hint of a chance. I welcomed boredom, if that was what it took to let me sit still for a full afternoon. Unfortunately, however, I was alone in that opinion. Take it easy. Ridiculous. I have no intention of boring myself for no good cause. I got more than enough sleep to last me for quite some time in the dungeon before we met, my liege. Nothing's more fun than getting out there and moving around, right? Sway thinks going hunting sounds fun too. Honestly, this is exactly what I meant about you guys being too active. I'm an indoorsy sort of guy at heart, and I need a house day every once in a while. Is there anything I can say to convince you to just relax today? I asked, giving my familiars a very tired stare. No. There is not. Same over here. Sway too. They didn't mince their words at all. I hung my head, resigned to the inevitable. It is time. Let us be off, Fell said. He and the rest of my familiars hustled me out the door as quickly as they could. I soon found myself walking along the streets of the capital with my familiars at my side. So, where are you planning on taking us hunting this time? And come to think of it, are we even going in the right direction? I asked. Previously, we'd usually gone in and out of the capital's large front gate. In fact, it was the only one we'd used so far. This time, however, we were walking in the opposite direction, and it sure seemed like Fell was leading us that way on purpose. We are, Fell replied. The rear gate will be more convenient for the sake of our destination today. Okay. I didn't even know there was a gate back there, actually. We investigated the matter in advance, rest assured. Did we not, Gan? Quite, yes. Dora and I made good use of the time we spent up in the skies on guard duty. Today's hunting ground is a location I made a note of after we stumbled across it during our watch. Guess they were keeping a pretty close eye on the ground while they were up there. Also, I guess that makes 2 hunting grounds in a row that Guns tipped us off about. He took us to the dragon turtle's territory as well, after all. Heh. Guns already told me all about it, and it sounds like we're in for a hell of a fun time today, declared Dora-chan, who was somersaulting excitedly through the air. Dora-chan thinks this place is going to be fun, and it has him this hyped up. Oh, I've got a really bad feeling about where this is going. We're going somewhere fun? Sway asked. We sure are, Dora-chan said. Apparently, there are a bunch of monsters that looked an awful lot like real nasty earth dragons hanging around there. A huge variety of 'em too, big ones, small ones, whole groups of 'em, you name it. It's gonna be crazy. Oh, yare. Sway'll get to pew a bunch of monsters. You know it. It's gonna be a hunt for the ages. Dora-chan and Sway made their conversation sound like a casual, happy little chat, but boy, was its content disturbing from my perspective. Monsters that look like real nasty earth dragons, with big variations in size, and that travel in packs. That sounds like a sort of creature I'd rather have nothing to do with, thanks. I scowled as conspicuously as I possibly could, but nobody bothered to comment on it. Yes, it truly does seem like an amusing place, Gun said. It's not quite like any other hunting ground I've been to before. I suspect you might have been there in the past, though, haven't you, Fel? A hunting ground different from anything you've seen before, you say? Fel repeated, intrigued. Indeed. You can just barely see it from here, in fact. Do you see that mountain, off in the distance? A basin lies near its peak. A basin atop a mountain. Oh, there. Fel exclaimed. Gun's explanation had apparently helped him put two and two together. Yes, that could be an interesting hunting ground indeed. The only fly in the ointment being that I don't believe much of the meat will be palatable, Gun noted. True. Edible though it may be, its flavor was hardly of passing quality. A shame. But you've no complaints about its worth as a hunting ground, I'm sure? It is unique. That I will grant you. Oh boy. There's another keyword I would have rather not have heard. What could unique possibly mean in this context? I sharpened the glare that I was shooting at Fel and Gun. Sorry to butt in when the conversation's just getting exciting, but what do you mean, unique? You're talking about the area we're going to, right? I asked. Quite, Fel said. You will understand when we arrive, but in short, a forest lies within a mountaintop basin. That forest is populated with monsters that are not often encountered in this region. Yes, and though those monsters come in all shapes and sizes, they share certain unique characteristic. It quite reminds me of a hunting ground we visited in the past, my liege, the one atop a towering plateau that I flew us to. It was full of unique monsters as well, if you recall. Oh, yes, that place was full of odd varieties as well, though the monsters we shall face today are unique in a different sense. A towering plateau that Gun flew us to. Unique, variant monsters. Ooh, that's a migraine coming on, all right. I really didn't want to remember the place they were talking about, but it was permanently etched into my memory. I could never forget the Heavens Woodland, more properly known as Uranos. Okay, bad plan. Let's do something else, I said. What? It is far too late to turn back, Fel countered. You can't be serious, my liege. Right. And hey, maybe you'll end up having fun when we get there. You never know. Masteer, let's go. First off, I can guarantee that I'm not gonna have any fun at all, Dora-chan. Absolutely no way, no how. If this place is actually anything like Uranos, there's no chance. Do you have any idea how traumatic my memories of that place are? I got jumped by a wild behemoth and my magic stove got totaled. It was a complete disaster. Enough of your petulant whining. We shall pass through the gate, then fly on Gun's back to our destination. I will not hear another word of complaint from you, Fel insisted. He planted his head on my back and pushed me forward, propelling me through the gate and out of the capital before I knew it. Then, the moment we were outside. The time has come, Gun. Very well. Dora, Sway, climb aboard. Hell yeah. Okay. And you as well. Hurry. Fel grabbed me by my collar and tossed me right up onto Gun. Gah. I yelped, then landed on Gun's back with a mighty thwump. We are all aboard. Very good. In that case, hold on tight. Gun flapped his wings, and just like that, we were off. Wait, no, I said no. If this place is even close to being on Uranos' level, I don't want to go anywhere near it. No. My wail echoed fruitlessly through the open sky as we sailed off toward the mountaintop. So, I said as I gaped at our surroundings, are we sure we're on a mountaintop right now? Indeed we are, my liege, Gun replied. You saw the mountain as I ascended above it, did you not? I mean, I did, yeah, but still. It's just really hard to believe that a forest like this could exist in a place like that, that's all, I muttered as I gazed vacantly at my surroundings. It was trees, and more trees, as far as the eye could see. The woods that I'd been brought to for the sake of my familiar's hunting trip were so impressive, I almost couldn't believe what I was seeing, considering they were located in the caldera at the top of a huge mountain. Plus, the scale of the woods wasn't even the most surprising thing about them. This doesn't really feel like a normal forest, does it? I commented. There were a weird amount of fern-like plants around, for one thing. The trees had oddly thick trunks as well, and the canopy of leaves that spread out from the branches up above was very thick. It sort of took me back to the illustrated books I'd read when I was a kid about dinosaurs in the Jurassic era, or whatever. Hadn't seen any plants like these since my arrival in this world. The climate was sort of off as well. The weather in the capital hadn't been especially hot or cold. It was in a comfortable middle ground, like the sort of weather you got in the nicest parts of spring. As we approached the mountain, however, patches of snow had started appearing on the ground below us, and close to its summit, the slopes had been pure white. It wasn't that cold up on Gun's back thanks to a barrier he'd raised, but all those piled up snowdrifts had me worried that I'd made a mistake by not dressing a little warmer. That concern, as it turned out, couldn't possibly have been more backward. The woods we'd landed in were so hot and muggy, I could already feel myself breaking out in a sweat. I could already see why Fel and Gan had compared this place to Urano's. It certainly felt unique, and I had a bad feeling that I'd only scratched the surface of its strangeness so far. I gulped. I'd been to some pretty terrifyingly dangerous places, and it seemed I would soon have another to add to that list. Hey, Master, look. Aren't those leaves funny? Sway said as it stretched a tentacle out to prod at a nearby fern-like plant. The moment it touched a leaf, that leaf curled inward, withdrawing toward the plant's stem. Sway squealed with delight. The heck was that? I wanna try, Dora-chan shouted. He rushed over to prod another of the fern's leaves, which curled inward as well. This is so cool. Sway wants to touch more of them. It was a pretty amusing plant, I had to admit. It certainly seemed like the perfect toy to amuse Dora-chan and Sway, who spent a little while gasping and squealing as they watched the plant shrink away from their touch. Even I found myself feeling a little charmed, until I shook my head and snapped back to reality, that is. Nope, this definitely isn't the sort of forest you'd take a relaxing stroll in, I reminded myself. And, wait a minute, we didn't tell the Adventurers Guild where we were going. I didn't even leave a note this time. We flew off without a word. The guildmaster's gonna spend all night chewing me out again, I moaned, my shoulders slumping dejectedly. I was wondering what you would choose to complain about this time, Fel jabbed. We're already here, my liege, so I'm afraid you'll have to resign yourself to the consequences, Gun added. Is a little sympathy too much to ask for from you guys? I jumped as I heard a rustling off in the distance, followed by some sort of snapping sound. Hey, did you hear that? Are you sure we're okay out here? I asked. It was just the sounds of the woods, my liege. There's no need for you to be quite this frightened, Gun commented, sounding a little exasperated. Can you really blame me? You're the ones who keep threatening my life. I fired back as I carefully surveyed my surroundings. Heh, Dora-chan chuckled. Okay, but seriously, you're being even jumpier than usual this time. Come on, you've got us here with you. What could go wrong? Sway'll protect you, Master. Oh, Sway, you're the only one who's always nice to me. Thank you. I'm counting on you, I said as I hugged the slime, who was currently riding on Fel's back along with me. You never cease to impress, in a very particular way, Fel commented with a fed-up sigh. Excuse me? Rude. I hardly think we threatened you, Gun said, awkwardly scratching his cheek with a claw. I'd ended up going out on the hunt alongside my familiars this time. I'd been planning on waiting somewhere while they went out and ran wild at first. Between dealing with the nerve-wracking experience of sitting around on my own, or following them and confronting ultra-dangerous monsters face to face, I had decided that quietly waiting around with only my anxiety to keep me company was the lesser of two evils by at least a slight margin. I'd known that Fell's and Gun's barriers would keep me safe, after all. When I had proposed that plan, however, Fell and Gun had asked me if I was really sure about it. I asked them why I wouldn't be, and they went on to present a laundry list of reasons. The monsters in this vicinity tend to be carnivorous, they're hardly the smartest, but they tend to be quite ferocious. We will raise barriers, of course, and you will not be eaten, even in the worst of cases. But, and please don't take offense, my liege, they're likely to see you as easy prey and gather up en masse to attempt to devour you, and though we will ensure they cannot touch you, we cannot prevent them from warring with one another once they have clustered in your vicinity. And that was just part of their extended explanation. Excuse me, what? That's terrifying. I could practically feel the color draining from my face. We have learned to expect your cowardice. The question seemed worth raising, considering, Fell said, his voice sounding small and far off in the distance from the isolated panic realm I'd sequestered my mind in. You will not be harmed, though. Our barriers will see to that. True. Our barriers won't be broken easily. Come what may, at the bare minimum, you won't be made a meal of, Gun added. Changed my mind. I'll go. Take me along, I frantically shouted. Sure, the barriers would have kept me physically safe. I wouldn't have died or anything. Having to watch a bunch of monsters eat one another around me, though? That sounded like a scene straight out of hell, and I wanted no part of it. I happen to like being able to sleep at night. That's a big no thank you to that sort of trauma from me. I was a little dejected to think that as far as Fell and Gan were concerned, nothing I went through mattered in the slightest as long as I was technically alive and uneaten by the end of it. Still, for the sake of my own mental stability, I decided to follow along with them after all. The five of us struck out into the dark, dense woodland. Sway doesn't see any monsters yet, Sway grumbled. It sounded a little bored. Are you too sure the monsters in these woods are raring for a fight? Dora-chan asked Fell and Gun. What's the problem if they aren't? If no monsters turn up, then I'd say it's our lucky day. In fact, if we keep walking for a while longer and nothing happens at all, why don't we just write this trip off and head home? Feels like a good plan to me, I said. I couldn't help but indulge in a little wishful thinking and imagine not encountering any bloodthirsty beasties at all. I think not. Moreover, they have already arrived, albeit only trifling weaklings, Fell said. So they have. Small ones that hunt in packs, it seems. A scant few of their number have come to observe us, Gun added. I jumped with shock, then quickly glanced around the area. Sway and Dora-chan looked around as well, though they seemed more excited than alarmed. A moment later, I heard the rustling of leaves as a group of little somethings popped their way out of the foliage. Oh, what are those? Lizards? Sway asked. The monsters were quite small, and there were 3 of them in total. I was shocked not by their size, but rather, their appearance. Dinosaurs. Wait, but how? They were a trio of little bipedal dinosaurs. I couldn't see them as anything else. That was pretty shocking, sure, but their size made it sort of hard to be scared of them. For better or for worse, I'd seen tons of monsters in this world that were way scarier than a few little dinos. They'd have to be a lot bigger and a lot more vicious to make me run away in fright. Weird, though. I feel like I've seen dinosaurs just like them somewhere before. Were they in a book, maybe? Or on a nature show on TV? I couldn't quite remember, but one way or another, compared to the enormous horrors this world usually threw at me, this didn't feel like such a big deal. They looked like dinosaurs, yeah, but they only came up to about my waist, and the way they were cocking their heads from one side to the other as they looked at us struck me as more funny than menacing. If anything, they were actually a little cute. Sway must have thought so too, because the slime had hopped out of my arms and was heading right toward them. Hi, lizards. Let's be friends, Sway said, reaching toward the dinos with a tentacle. It was a really heartwarming scene, and I found myself smiling. Beware. Even the small ones are predators, Fel commented offhandedly. Chomp. And then the next thing I knew, one of the little dinos had bitten Sway's tentacle. The other two took that as their sign to attack and leaped forward, biting into the slime's bulbous body. Ag, no. Swee. Boo. You're not gonna beat Sway that easy. Take this, Sway said. Barely a moment later, all three of the dinos reeled back and let out horrible, screeching shrieks of pain. They let go of Sway immediately and fell to the ground, their limbs flailing wildly. Yikes. Dora-chan grunted. I see. It secreted acid into them, Fel said. Gruesome, but effective indeed. I can think of few attacks more assured to finish off a foe, Gun noted as he watched the dinosaurs dissolve from the inside out. Hee. That's right. Sway's super strong, the slime declared with a proud little dance-like wiggle. Sway, I muttered. I was already feeling drained. Do not let your guards down. The main force approaches, Fel warned. Wait, what main force? Those three were merely a patrol, my liege, Gun explained. Wait, so that means… They are here. They may be weak, but their numbers are great. Dora, Sway, do what you can to eliminate them on your own. Can't he say I like getting sicked on the small fry, but what the hell? Let's rumble. Yeah. Sway'll work hard and beat them all up. I could hear a thudding noise off in the distance, the sound of countless little dinosaur feet charging right at us. A moment later, the horde arrived. Holy crap, that's a lot of them, I yelped. Seeing the whole cluster of them all at once also finally helped me make the connection and remember where I'd seen them before. Wait, I know those things. I saw them in a movie once. They're small, but really nasty, like landbound piranhas. Shouting, it turned out, was probably a mistake. A group of dinos broke off from the main pack and charged straight at me. Gah. No, not this way. Not this way. No bullying, master. Take this. Pew pew pew. Can't he let you hog all the glory, Sway? I'm getting in on this. Hiya. Shwick shwick shwick. The air was quickly filled with acid bullets courtesy of Sway and pillars of magic ice courtesy of Dora-chan. Oh Dora, Sway? You would do well to not draw too close to them, Gun said. Fwoosh. Whoa, yikes. Yes, as you can see, they breathe fire. You could have frigging said so earlier, Gan. Yes, my apologies. Let that warning carry forward, many of the monsters in this vicinity are capable of it. Oh, really? That was a pretty wimpy fireball compared to mine, though. I'ma show them what real fire breath looks like. Fwoosh. Dora-chan let out such a violent burst of pseudo-dragon fire, it almost seemed like he was trying to immolate all of the little dinosaurs at once. Whoa. Too far, Dora-chan. You're gonna set the forest on fire. And while I'm at it, why the heck do the dinosaurs in this world breathe fire, of all things? Heh. We beat up all of them. Bunch of wimps, seriously. We didn't break a sweat. Sway and Dora-chan had made such short work of the pack of small dinosaurs, it felt like they'd barely even qualified as a warm-up. Naturally. I would expect no less from the two of you, Fel commented. We'll need to find much mightier foes for them to be a match for you, Gun said. I'm sorry, really? They wiped out a whole horde of piranha dinos in the blink of an eye, and that's your reaction? And fire-breathing ones, at that? It really didn't help that the dinosaurs' remains had been left scattered all around the vicinity. It was pretty gruesome. I'm glad you took care of them and all, but we're not gonna get any materials out of these things, are we? I said as I glanced over their charred, partially melted corpses. And why would that be an issue? Their meat is unpalatable, regardless, Fel replied. Moreover, carrying such petty prey back with us would hardly be worth the effort, even if they were whole. If you're hoping to secure materials, my liege, "You'd do far better aiming for larger prey," Gun noted. I almost gave in and left the dinosaur corpses behind, but at the last second, I changed my mind again. Fel and Gan were going on and on about how they weren't a big deal, sure, but could I really trust their perspectives? The dinosaurs seemed pretty rare, after all. I'd certainly never heard of monsters like them before. If Fel and Gan were right, and this place really was home to strange and rare monster breeds like Uranos had been, then it seemed very likely that they would be the sort of monsters that the guild would only see cross their butcher's workbench every whatever 100 years. In other words, the tiny dinosaurs that Fel and Gan were so eager to dismiss could be worth an awful lot to the Adventurers Guild, if only for the sake of studying them. I remembered Willem offhandedly mentioning something to that effect when I had brought him the monsters we'd found in Uranos, which was probably why he'd bought all of them, no exceptions. Considering all that, I decided to snap up at least a few of the dino corpses before we went along on our way. Needless to say, I went for the relatively unmutilated ones. "What exactly do you hope to accomplish by carrying such petty weaklings with you?" Fel grumbled. "I mean, I know you and Gun don't think they're anything special, but quick question, have any humans even been here? Like, at all?" I asked, giving Fel and Gan an appraising glance. "I neither know nor care," Fel said. "Nor I'm afraid," Gan added. "Of course not," I groaned. They hadn't thought any of this through at all, so I took a moment to explain everything I'd been considering to them. So, long story short, monsters in a place that people can't get to like this would probably be really valuable to the Adventurers Guild, strong or not. "Is that so? Do as you will, then," Fel conceded. "Why yes, quite," Gun agreed. "No need to refrain from collecting them on our behalf, my liege." "Great, I won't, then." That settled my course of action. I'd be picking up any monsters that we killed, in the hopes that the guild would be able to put them to good use. That, hopefully, would spare me from another of Willem's patented lectures. Actually, if I'm being honest, that was my biggest objective. I just hope that bringing him some new and compelling monster materials to look into will be enough to spare me his wrath. "Ag, would you please do something, already? Be silent. I cannot concentrate on the battle with your ceaseless blathering in the background." "Fear not, my liege. My barrier won't be broken that easily." "Yeah, seriously. We're fighting over here, so shut share trap and wait a minute. Look how strong Sway is. Taka this." Fel, Gan, Dora-chan, and Sway were all currently fighting their hardest. For all their complaints about my distracting them, it didn't seem to be preventing them from enjoying the battle at all. It also didn't do anything to stop the monsters that were trying their hardest to eat me for lunch. Sure, Gun's barrier's keeping me safe, but it's not stopping them from trying to kill me, and all those gnashing teeth are really doing a number on my nerve. Why are they even this aggressive in the first place? "Just finish up quick and help me, please," I shouted, shrinking farther into the ball I'd curled myself up into. After we had dealt with the aftermath of our encounter with the little dinosaurs, we had once again set off into the woods. It had barely taken any time at all for another dinosaur to make an appearance. The first one that Fel had decided was worth his time to take on. It was big enough that I had to crane my neck to look up at it, with a spiked frill-like sort of thing running along its neck, and a pair of red eyes that were glaring straight at us. It let out a snort, then opened up its mouth to reveal a row of extremely sharp, pointed teeth. Weirdly, I had a feeling that I'd seen the monster before. I had a really clear image of something just like it turning up in a movie I'd seen, and while I was mulling that over, it let out a screech that was also very much like the one the movie dinosaur had made, and that I really couldn't describe in words in any other way, then charged straight at us, moving at a way faster clip than I'd expected it to be capable of. "Heh. Finally, worthy prey. I shall deal with this creature," Fel declared, stepping forward to take the dino on. I knew that he'd be perfectly fine, so I withdrew a short distance away from the battlefield with my other familiars. I appraised the monster, and learned that it was apparently called an Acrocanthosaurus. It was carnivorous, of course, and I was once again surprised to learn that it could apparently breathe fire, but this time, that was just the start. "Hey, watch out," That thing's supposed to spit acid, I shouted. Me. Mere acid would not harm me in the slightest. Fel shouted back as he dodged around the Acrocanthosaurus, which was lashing out repeatedly to bite at him. Its movements were swift and sharp, but nowhere near impressive enough to keep up with Fel's agility. That must have frustrated it, because a moment later, the Acrocanthosaurus raised its head and opened its mouth wide. It was obviously about to spit something. As I said before, acid will have no effect on me, and while you may be swift to the creatures that live here, to me, your movements are so sluggish you might as well be standing still. Fel brought a foreleg down before him, letting loose what I'd come to see as his signature move, rending claws. The attack struck the Acrocanthosaurus right in its chest, cleaving straight through it. The dinosaur's head fell to the ground, and just like that, the battle was over. For a moment, at least, peace had returned to the forest. The sound of Fel's battle, however, seemed to have attracted quite a bit of attention, and before I knew it, dinosaurs started pouring in from all directions. Worse still, I could tell at a glance that every one of them was as nasty and vicious as could be. The local wildlife had thrown down the gauntlet, and there was no chance it would end in anything other than a no-holds-barred brawl. Fel ended up squaring off against one of the biggest dinos of the bunch. A quick appraisal identified it as a Giganotosaurus, and according to its description, it could both breathe fire and bite through pure scarlatite. Gun's dinosaur, meanwhile, I knew the name of before I even appraised it. It was the tyrant lizard itself, a Tyrannosaurus rex. My appraisal did, however, inform me that unlike the T-Rexes I knew about, this one could breathe fire and bite through adamantite. Oh, and its claws carried a venom strong enough to inflict instant death. Dora-chan was fighting a dinosaur called a Carcharodontosaurus, and its appraisal results were much the same as the T-Rex's in that it could breathe fire and bite through adamantite. Instead of venomous claws, however, its claws could apparently slice through adamantite as well. Finally, Sway was taking on a Carnotaurus. It was a bit smaller than the dinosaurs my other familiars were fighting, but it had a pair of horns on its head and was fast enough on its feet that I had a feeling it rivaled the Acrocanthosaurus in terms of sheer agility. Watching something that fast and deadly-looking chase Sway around nearly gave me a fear-induced heart attack. Its appraisal text told me that it could breathe fire, bite through adamantite, and had an incredible capacity for running that ensured no prey would ever escape it. While my familiars were fighting all those prehistoric terrors, I was stuck in the middle of it all, hoping against hope that they'd wrap it up quickly. The other dinosaurs, however, weren't interested in waiting for their turns and decided to attack me instead. The ones that went after me were much smaller than the ones my familiars were locked in pitched battle with, but they still looked stupidly dangerous. The fact that they charged me en masse the second they laid eyes on me was all the proof I needed of that. I was standing in a barrier, so none of the dinosaurs had actually been able to touch me, but they were snapping and gnashing their horrible, toothy jaws at me with everything they had. That wasn't too surprising once I'd appraised them. I was facing down a pack of notoriously belligerent velociraptors. Anyway, that brings us back to the present moment. Chomp, chomp, chomp. Gah. Aren't you guys done yet? Whoosh. Even these ones breathe fire? Seriously? No amount of flinching back was enough when it came to an onslaught like this. And, more to the point, I had a few thoughts about this situation on the whole. Okay, I know this is a different world and all, but there's something seriously screwed up with these dinosaurs. Hey, Demiurge, you made this world, didn't you? Why the hell did you put fire-breathing dinosaurs in it? I shouted, complaining to the world's creator deity, who happened to be an acquaintance of mine, mostly on reflex. Oh. Well, yes, I suppose I might have gotten a touch carried away with them, a voice in my head immediately replied. I was inspired by the dinosaurs from your world, you see, but then I thought, why not give them my own personal touch? You know, add a splash of originality. Awfully casual about populating your world with vicious death lizards, aren't you? And why would they need a splash of originality? They're dinosaurs. To be completely honest, I'd actually entirely forgotten that there were any left alive at all. How interesting. You forgot. You'd be surprised how easy it can be, sometimes. And considering you're accompanied by two of this world's mightiest beasts, I'm sure you'll make it out just fine. That is so not the point here. Oh, whoops. Duty calls, but I'm sure you see how it is now. Fare thee well. What, hey, demiurge? Demiurge? Ugh, that was terrifying, I moaned. If I'd had a mirror handy to look at myself in, I had a funny feeling I'd look so tired and haggard you'd think I'd just gotten over a week-long fever. It had been a horrific experience, no two ways about it. I'd lost track of how many times I'd nearly wet myself. The dinosaurs that lived in the mountaintop basin were too scary for words. Fel, Gan, Dora-chan, and Sway's attitudes, meanwhile, were the polar opposite of mine. They looked like they'd just finished up a satisfying walk in the park, and were chatting away about the dinosaurs they'd fought. Ha 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 ha. Oh, how fun it is to trade blows with a foe willing to face you head-on. The first beast I vanquished was hardly worthy of note, but the second was both larger and possessed a bite strong enough to rival my own. Even I would have been in danger had it closed its jaws around me, though of course, such a thing could never be possible to begin with. True indeed. Yours was the largest out of all of ours, Fel, but mine was a match for it in ferocity. It did not hesitate for a moment to assail an ancient dragon. In fact, it tried to eat me, of all things. It had remarkable mettle, truly. Lethal venom as well, apparently, but that would never have worked on me, of course. Gra ha ha ha. Yeah, the ones you two were up against looked pretty nasty, but did you see mine? I would have been seriously up a creek if it bit me, and its claws were crazy sharp to boot. I mean, if one of those had even grazed me, it would have opened me right up. Too bad I was way too fast for it to ever get the chance. Goes to show that no matter how strong of a bite you've got and how sharp your claws are, they're not worth squat if your enemy can just dodge 'em. Sway's monster was super duper strong too. It was really fast, but Sway dodged like this, and then pewed it and beat it. Sway's super strong too. Everyone was still riding the post-battle adrenaline rush, it seemed, while I was busy crashing, and hard. I just went around scooping up the dinosaur corpses as they did their little play-by-play post-battle review session. I ended up grabbing a decapitated Acrocanthosaurus, a Giganotosaurus that had had its gut torn open and all sorts of bits that I assumed were very important strewn across the nearby grass, a T-Rex with a few very deep claw wounds and its head bitten almost all the way off, a Carcharodontosaurus that had a brutal burn inside its mouth reaching all the way down to its throat, a Carnotaurus that had had a hole melted clean through its torso, and, last but not least, an assortment of velociraptors that had all been split clean in half. I did my best to not think about what I was doing while I collected them all. I really did. Anyway, once that gruesome task was complete, we set off into the woods once more, this time, most of us, in the highest of spirits. We ran into one carnivorous dinosaur after another as we kept moving along, each of which was gleefully dispatched by one of my familiars. That said, the human capacity for adaptability was once again proving itself terrifyingly potent. We'd been attacked by enough dinosaurs to make me want to stop and shout, "How many of these even are there?" to the heavens, and over the course of those attacks, I'd gotten so used to ducking for cover the second a new one arrived that it was basically second nature. I'd just done it a second beforehand, in fact, when Dora-chan and Sway jumped to intercept a T-Rex that charged straight at us. Seriously, though, why are there so many of these things? It sure looks like they've all been eating one another to survive, so maybe they were made to breed quickly enough for their populations to stay stable in this sort of environment. Not that I'd know what makes an ecosystem sustainable to begin with, I guess. And one way or another, the fact that some of them have been trying to go for me feels really uncalled for. Hell yeah. Chalk up another win for us. Yay. We beat it. Dora-chan and Sway, it seemed, had taken their newest prey down. I went over to collect the departed T-Rex. I'd say what number it was, but the truth is, I'd lost count some time ago. Then, a moment later, I heard heavy, thudding footsteps off in the distance. "It seems we have another challenger," Fel said. "And I do believe it's my turn," Gun noted. "Correct. And mine after. And even the senior citizens are acting giddy as could be. Ugh! Could we please go home soon? We walked on until finally, we emerged in a grassy clearing where something truly remarkable awaited us. Holy crap, that's a huge one, I muttered under my breath. The long-necked dinosaur before me was big enough that it made the Giganotosaurus from before look like it had been a kid by comparison, and to top it off, there were 3 of them in total. I, however, had some very helpful insider information this time. Long-necked dinosaurs like those were all herbivores. I could rest easy this time, or at least, I thought I could until I watched one of the long-necked dinosaurs bend over to snatch a T-Rex, which had been in the process of eating a smaller dinosaur, up off the ground with its jaws, right before my eyes. What? I grunted. A fun fact about humans is that when we are greeted with the truly unexpected, we often find ourselves completely incapable of reacting. That was the state I'd found myself in, and I sort of just vacantly stared until something even more shocking followed the first surprise. Instead of eating the T-Rex, the long-necked dinosaur that had grabbed it dashed it against the ground. The T-Rex slammed into the earth with an ear-splitting thud, then lay there, not moving an inch. And then, yet another surprise, the long-necked dinosaur leaned in to start chowing down on the T-Rex's corpse after all. Oh, no frigging way. But no, seriously, hold the phone for just a second. Weren't dinos like that supposed to be herbivores? Why is it snacking on a T-Rex, of all things? Hey, why's that thing eating a T-Rex? I shouted, giving Fells back a few solid slaps as I spoke. Because it is a meat-eater, I am sure, Fell bluntly replied. I mean, yeah, I figured that part out. I had thought they might still stand at the pinnacle of this place's food chain, Fell continued. As did I, Gunn added. They have always been, and still remain, this region's mightiest inhabitants. Hot damn, those re huge. Now this is gonna be a real fight, Dora-chan said. Woo, so big, Sway chimed in. Does that mean what I think it means? You guys are seriously taking those on? Those? I could tell that my familiars were already hyped up for battle, and I looked on in utter dismay for a moment. Ah. Until suddenly, one of the long-necked dinosaurs looked straight at me. Our gazes met. Oh. Welp. I'm dead. I watched in what felt like slow motion as that long neck reached out toward me. Then, right before I would have been eaten whole, something pulled me away, sending me plopping to the ground on my backside. Stand back, Fell said. This is a task for us, my liege, Gunn agreed. Yeah, just sit back and wait a minute. We'll have a real big gun for you before you know it, Dora-chan declared. Sway'll fight super hard, master, Sway added. My 4 familiars stood at the ready, eager as could be to take down this region's long-necked apex predator. Ha ha ha, I weakly laughed. Why are these things carnivores? Dinosaurs like that are absolutely supposed to be herbivores, right? Herbivorous dinosaurs don't eat meat, and even carnivorous dinosaurs don't shoot fire out of their mouths. All of the dinosaurs on this mountain are completely wrong. How was I supposed to do anything but laugh, honestly? Well, laugh, and blame Demiurge, since this was definitely his fault. Seriously, Demiurge, why did you make this place? I muttered under my breath. A moment later, a voice rang out in my mind once again. I just thought they were cool, to be perfectly honest. I'm sure you know how children in your world love to dream up the coolest dinosaur ever, yes? Well, I must admit that I was rather youthful myself at the time, and was going through a phase where I'd convinced myself that bigger meant more powerful, with no exceptions. How very inexperienced I was. Ho 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 ho. Ho 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 yourself. This is so not a laughing matter, and I know for a fact that you're brushing me off again. Okay, look, I get the feeling that these dinosaurs don't exist anywhere other than here, and it sure doesn't seem like they're interested in leaving this place, but just think about what would happen if one of them did somehow, and found its way to a village. It'd be a bloodbath. What possessed you to make all these ridiculous monsters? I said. Then, suddenly, a thought hit me and I jerked my head up with a start. Hold on. I really don't want to consider this, Demiurge, but are there any other places with absurd monsters living in them? You didn't make any more crazy abominations like these, did you? A very, very long pause ensued. Probably not. And why, exactly, did you have to spend that long thinking about it if the answer's just a probably? A probably is a probably. Fare thee well. Hey, wait. That was just an I don't actually remember sort of probably, right, Demiurge? Right. Demiurge?